Hold on. All right, welcome everybody. Good evening. We'll call the meeting to order at 6:30 on Wednesday, November 5th, the Montpelier-Roxbury Board of School Directors. And our first order of business, as always, is public comment. So if we have any members of public in the room to comment on either items before the board on our agenda for the evening, or really just generally anything, we really appreciate hearing from the public. Even though we don't engage in conversation with folks during public comment, it really helps inform board decision making. So if we've got folks in the room who'd like to make public comment, please step up to the mic and introduce yourself. And then we'll also, if there's anyone online who would like to, please go ahead and raise your hand, and Libby or Anna can get you into the queue.
Hey folks, Jim Eikenberry, Montpelier resident, and just can't stop showing up. And so as always, appreciate you all being here on a lovely November evening, especially our Roxbury crew making the drive. So thank you all. I saw that there was going to be some discussion tonight about some of the challenges that are out there in the system. So one of the things I wanted to do is express gratitude for the co-curriculars that are out there, in particular sports, which I'm a volunteer coach with. I've really seen the benefit for our student athletes in them really getting that sense of belonging and that connection to the school and to one another. And I know from my personal experience that sports help me to be connected to my school and want to show up. And showing up is a big part of, if we can get them here and they're fed. And I know that there might be fiscal challenges ahead and other structural challenges. But I hope that we don't lose sight of the importance of the co-curriculars, and that we can still find ways to make sports and clubs and things like that happen. Very related to that, I really wanted to show appreciation for the Roxbury sports bus. We had 3 regular middle school cross-country student athletes, and that bus was a lifeline for them. They couldn't have done the sport without it. And having been that rural kid who was bused, who couldn't have done the sport without the bus, I just really want to talk about how important that is. Let's keep making busing happen correctly for Roxbury, so those kids have equal opportunity to everything that we're offering. I don't think we should ever sacrifice that. Even if times are tough, those kids deserve access to everything that MRPS is offering now. And then third, you won't see it because it's dark and rainy and miserable out there, but the track renovations for the throwing, for the jumping area and the vaulting area are almost complete. The paving's done, concrete work is done. It's looking good. And so we're really excited about that. It was a long time coming. We appreciate the board's support in making that happen. It's going to be infinitely safer and better from a training standpoint. I hope we can do a renovation tour sometime when it is more light out and maybe less rainy. I've talked to Tom about that and I'm just waiting to hear back, but hopefully we can get you guys out there, show you what you invested in, and talk about how it's going to be good for the team. So just grateful for that, and maybe next time I show up, I'll have some numbers from Matt, and we'll talk about how the running programs are continuing to grow, and we appreciate that support, including newly indoor track, which I'll be coaching, and hopefully not alone, and we're just continuing to grow those sports, so it's exciting that good things are continuing to happen. So appreciate y'all.
Thank you, Jim.
Thanks, Jim.
Do we have anyone online hoping to speak a public comment? I don't think so. Okay, I gotta shake the head. Okay. Well, let's move right along then to the consent agenda, which is a bundle of documents and mostly meeting minutes that the board can save a little bit of time by passing and approving all as one package. And of course, as any board member can pull something from the consent agenda for discussion if they feel it's warranted. So is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Yeah, we pulled off the one policy. It's,
Let's get a second and then we'll get questions.
I'll second.
Second, okay,
Yeah.
great. Is there discussion?
Yes. I have a question about the policy F5 that's in there.
Okay, behavioral threat assessment.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I don't know if we need to take it out or not, but there's the adoption notes that says that this text box and disclaimer should be removed prior to adoption, so I'm assuming that we're gonna wanna remove that prior to adoption.
Yeah, we can flag that for Anna. It's like a default box in the template.
Is it okay to actually
Yeah,
adopt it as a policy, which we will do if we all vote in favor of
Oh,
the
I see.
consent agenda? That's what Scott is raising.
That change wouldn't make any difference to the policy, so I think we will, if you adopt the policy, Anna can just take it out when she puts it up on the website.
Fantastic.
And that's the technical term for it, ministerial?
I think it's just a ministerial.
Administerial.
Just without the AD.
Without the, yeah.
Oh, okay, got it. Okay. So it seems fine to keep it in there, all right? Rhett, was that, did you have a different question? No? I noticed that we've had three policies up for first and second reading, and I see that we've pulled policy C13, but I don't know what happened to policy C9, which was also in this clump, but is not in either place.
Good question.
do you know which one is C9?
That one was wellness?
Did we pass it at second reading last time?
No, it hasn't yet been in the consent agenda. The way, the process that we've followed. So maybe that's just, we'd see it in the next meeting's consent agenda?
I know that I just sent feedback on that to Rhett recently, within the week, Rhett, or was it last week? I don't know, the weeks kind of mold together, so might be the policy team needs to look at that again.
Okay, yeah,
So we have to discuss the feedback at our
Got
meeting
it.
on the 12th.
okay, I just didn't want us to lose it and assume that we adopted it and then never actually adopt it. Okay,
Still
That-
in the agenda for the policy.
policy committee, great, okay. Any other questions on policies in the consent agenda? I just wanted to highlight a couple of things from Libby's superintendent report. First, I just wanted to second the congratulations to Ally Tarwater, Julie Smart, and Sadie Jones for their awards and recognition as awesome teachers. Just recognizing how amazing they are. So I wanted to pull that out and say that out loud because I know not everybody reads the superintendent report as thoroughly as us board members. So bring that to the public. And then I also wanted to highlight, because we have as a board been discussing the capital fund and reserve funds being some possibly being moved to the capital fund, and we had said that we would make a decision on that at this board meeting. I wanted to highlight that we're not making any decision at this board meeting. Rather, the administration is going to go out to bid as an information gathering tactic so that we get more specific information than we've been able to get so far, with just kind of their best guesses and some of their like, hey, can you tell me what this might cost? We're actually doing that's what the RFP bidding process that Libby's talking about in her superintendent report is, and why we're not making any decisions tonight. We want to get some more of that information before we make a final decision on that. And doing so is one initial step in the process so that this gives us more time to get more information without slowing us down and keeping us from doing any construction in the summer if we want to go that route. So just an update on that process there. Libby, did I miss anything on that?
Nope, you did good.
Okay, great. All
Can I
right,
ask a procedural question about the policy committee, just generally?
sure.
If there's a policy and it says choose A or B, and the policy committee asks the administration to choose A or B, and that answer comes back to me, can I make the change and then do I have to wait for the meeting to start to make the change? The policy committee meeting to start to make the change, or can I make the change and then point it out during the policy committee meeting?
I think it's the latter.
have to make the change during no,
No,
I can just point it out, so I can
Yeah.
get work done prior
Yes.
to the meeting and not be.
Yes, you can.
Just to get more done.
yes.
Okay.
You can bring things to the
So long as
policy
I-
committee that's work you've done
Okay.
for discussion at the meeting.
Okay.
Yep. All right, any other discussion on the consent agenda? Okay, all those in favor?
Alright,
Any opposed? All right, we're gonna welcome back for 2 weeks in a row, or 2 meetings in a row, I should say. UES Principal Rachel Whalen and joined by Sam LaFleur. I saw her here. Where'd she go? Oh, you're hiding behind the plant. Please come to the table. Katie Swick and Allie Mahoney. Thank you for joining us to discuss and share with us about prioritizing play at UES.
All right, I'm gonna start by
Oh, no.
acknowledging
Oh,
that I have laryngitis. So bear with me. I was playing with my voices earlier. I realized if I drop it an octave, you can hear me better, but I sound really strange, so we're sticking with this. I'm just doing my voice stuff. Yeah, thank you. I was thinking of you when I was doing that. So we are here tonight to talk about the work we're doing at UES and prioritizing play in our school. And this is directly related to our goals and our continuous improvement plan about increasing student belonging and achieving academic excellence. And so the first thing I want to start by talking about today is, if someone could go to the slide, thank you, is talking about where we started this conversation. So this conversation started last year. I was a member of the Guiding Coalition last year along with Katie. And we started off last year by thinking about what do we want to prioritize in our master schedule. And we began with an article from Joelle Van Lent, who's been a resource to our district over the years. And she had written a fabulous article that I linked in the slideshow about prioritizing play in elementary schools, specifically thinking about K-4. And so we read the article as a group, we came back, we went to our teams, we came back, and we started thinking about, okay, is this something that we want to take on as a school? And so it was a unanimous decision. We surveyed the staff. Yes, this is something we want to take on. And we really wanted to think about the challenge that we were faced with. Over the past 5 years, we've seen some significant, we've seen students that are struggling with social skills, those feelings of belonging. And we've also seen that they are needing support with maintaining focus and sustaining attention. And so we, after reading the article and after having discussions and talking with teams, we realized we have an opportunity here because our staff believes in the power of play. And so we decided as a Guiding Coalition to really take this head on. How can we prioritize play in our master schedule and really harness that very important tool that we have in our schools? Slide. So there were 3 kind of big key factors from Joelle's article that really hit home for us, that these are things that have been impacting student development. The first one is screen time. There's just an increased amount of screen time. No matter how intentional and purposeful we try to be with it, screen time has just increased dramatically in the last 5 to 6 years. And so that has, of course, impacted our face-to-face interactions with each other, adults to adults, kids to kids, adults to kids. And so that was one of those key factors that we were looking at. The second one is COVID-19. You'll be shocked to know has had an impact on schools and kids and adults. And so because of that, we have a lot of students, all of our students in our schools missed out on key developmental milestones with peers during that time, no matter what their age was. And so that was another key factor we were looking at. And also, as we've worked towards more rigor in schools, one of the things that we sometimes are trading off in schools is less opportunities for free play. In our efforts to provide more structure, which we know is important for students, we also have kind of provided a detriment to students in that we've taken away some of those opportunities for the free unstructured playtime that kind of Katie's going to talk more about in a minute what the benefits of that are. Next slide. Thank you. So one of the things that our school is really exploring is how important play is. And instead of viewing it as a luxury to include in the day, seeing it as the most important element of everyone's day. And how it's essential to help kids expand their understanding and knowledge of the world and themselves and ourselves. And when we look at people that have studied play and the impacts, two of them are quoted on this slide. Piaget and also Fred Rogers, we all know, really have made it their work to increase play for everyone and to see the benefits of it.
Okay. I'm gonna add Stuart Brown in my master's in free time. I really enjoyed reading that book by Stuart Brown. He's founded the National Institute for Play. And wrote a really good book for play for everyone. We are talking about students today and what play can do for students, but it also expands to everyone. But so first of all, play meets kids where they're at. It's built-in differentiation. And I know I'm a kindergarten teacher, but I'm speaking for all the grades, and it's really important. You don't just think of me as a kindergarten teacher. But it differentiates, it's built right in. And it provides opportunities for communicating with each other and building connections. Whether you are communicating as a whole class, you're playing with a whole class and working together. The kids are building connections with adults, they're building connections with their friends, stronger ones, and they're also making new friends in play and the different types of play that we offer and students. And then they learn social skills, practicing really important social skills. Play has this element of like walls coming down and there's vulnerability, and they can connect to different peers that they normally don't connect with, whether it's on the playground, in the classroom. And I often, when I take my kids to the forest, I have kids playing together that don't normally play together because they discover they have interests that they didn't even know they had when they're there. And we know when we build connection, we increase belonging. Children also get time to process what they're learning. So when you play, you kind of go into this play state and you turn off everything else and you get into a different state, and that lets your brain process the information and learn when you're in that state. Yeah, what else? I'm just gonna say about that. That's about it. Oh, I'm not done yet. A quiet, thank you. Quiet. Like days, not everybody's a social kid when you're in school, and when we offer opportunities for play, it lets some of those kids that need some quiet time to do what they need, or maybe it is socializing with friends is what those kids need. And we're finding, I think that kids have a lot of anxiety and stress in their lives, whether it's indirectly or directly from everything that's around them. And when you're in that play state, your worries go away. And that's also really important for kids to not be in that state of worry and stress all the time. So that's another important part. And one more thing, what did I want to say? It allows children their focus and interest. Play is also a space for control and freedom within safe boundaries. So when you give kids an opportunity to play, they have that control and they have freedom, and then they can express themselves in the multitude of ways that play offers, which builds intrinsic motivation and confidence. And they get to practice and understand and grow everything that they're learning in their lives. So very important.
So after we had decided what our purpose was and what is kind of the background, what's the driving force behind that work, we decided it was important to make time for choice time. So we wanted to make sure that we were adding 15 to 40 minutes of free play time every afternoon for all students, K through 4. Choice time has been a fixture of kindergarten and first grade schedules for years. But second, third, and fourth, it was kind of inconsistent where that was offered. And what we heard from teachers is, do I have permission to let kids play? And so we realized what we put in the master schedule is what we value as a school. We've done a lot of shifts with that over the year of making sure that we have carved out times for academic blocks, for social emotional learning, morning meetings, obviously recess and lunch and essential arts. But we didn't have a carved out time K4 for pre-K4 because obviously pre-K tons of play happening there too. And so we wanted to make sure that that play was time when teachers were providing fun activities and games and allowing kids to have some choice and autonomy over what they do. And so we designated specific time in our schedule for play, obviously based on developmental level. So in third and fourth grade, it's 15 minutes. Second grade, it's about 25 minutes. First grade, it's 30. K is 40. And then pre-K has about an hour plus every day for play, because pretty much all of their learning is done through play in pre-K. So that was last year. We created the master schedule. And then when I kicked off this year with the staff, I wanted to go back to that master schedule. And I actually had an opportunity. I was at the VPA conference this summer, and I got to listen to another principal talk about prioritizing play in her school. And so what she had done with her team was create these play plans. And so I brought that work back to UES, and I tasked our grade level teams and our essential arts teams and said, not only are we going to play, but we're going to play with a purpose, and not wanting to take away that choice and that autonomy from kids, but we wanted to figure out what our role was in that play, because so often teachers, the reason play sometimes gets overlooked is because teachers are not sure what their role is in that. And so we wanted to make sure teachers understood this is an opportunity for you to do some really explicit teaching. And so grade level teams and essential arts team went through, we have these UES SEL skills that go across the grade level bands. And each team was tasked with choosing 2 to 3 skills that they really wanted to make sure they were targeting during play. They then created play plans that included the types of activities they would do that would foster those skills. And then also making sure that they were figuring out where is play happening in their day. And so, we were finding obviously the choice time that was in the schedule, but recess, morning meeting has opportunities for play, snack recess, and really wanted to talk about making sure that play was face-to-face interactive and really moving away from the use of technology during that playtime, because, right, that's one of those impacts that we were trying to offset. And then, so you can see in the presentation in the slides, these were the skills that our grade level teams focused on. And then what happened with our essential arts team is they kind of took this play plan and brought it to the next level. And I'm going to let Sam and Alan talk about that next.
To start off with this, I'm going to talk specifically about the blocks of specials. So our essential art times with our students, it's always been at the root of what we do. You play an instrument, you play a sport, you play when you read and bring books to life, you play when you're using art supplies. And so it's part ingrained in what we teach. But we wanted to lean further into it. We wanted to figure out ways to bring up their understanding of key concepts that we teach. So for example, in music class, our youngest students really immerse in music academics by being imaginative. For example, in the kindergarten today, I was working with kids on a song about cooking and baking pies. And our kindergartners were running around the room getting the materials they needed to bake. And as soon as they came back, we were able to sing the song, and they could use their experience of imaginative play to remember the lyrics of the song. Or another way is to bring out a puppet and have the children sing to the puppet. And let me tell you, the songs that they'll sing to a flippy bird are far more expressive than that if they're staring at me and feeling anxious about what I'm thinking. Because I'm sure that Lula will make sure that they feel loved in a different way that a human can in that age. Other ways that we do this is cooperative dances, having students engage with each other and get a chance to make memorable moments through that. Older grades, we do activities such as Twister and learning how to play and read music notation by having 5 lines of the staff on the floor and putting your foot on B, putting your hand on A. And let me tell you, that teaches you a lot about where things are on the staff. So I also took some quotes from PE and art, so I want to share those tonight. In PE classes, Emmanuel and MJ believe that when students get to move, explore, and have fun, they're learning new movement skills, discovering how their bodies respond, and build confidence. This month, the PE program is beginning the gymnastics unit where play really comes into focus. Throughout the unit, there's also a choice-based creative station where students can practice any skill they'd like or even invent their own. I think of Simone Biles in that moment. This looks like students traveling all around the gym, experimenting with movement and creating routines that are completely their own. In visual art classes, Christina's themes this year is artists at play. Children are invited to explore art media and materials through their hands and imaginations at the beginning of each new project. Children are also invited to engage in artist choice time at the end of each class to build their studio habits as artists at play. Centering play and artistic exploration across grade levels is boosting our creative thinking skills, engagement in learning, and feelings of joy in making art by hand. Ali is going to take over in a second, but in the library, each class after the library lessons, students are given the additional time to have opportunities to explore the library and choose to draw, build, or play games together. If you want to take over from there.
Sure. And then this year so I'm Ali Maney, the new UES librarian. And this year we've added a section in the morning where the essential arts team, we cover a meeting time for the classroom teachers. And we've made this time a go play time, and we offer 2 options in the morning, one indoor and one outside. And it's like indoor and outside, a quieter space or a louder space. Sometimes we, the library is open for 3rd and 4th graders, so they have an opportunity to spend a little bit more time either playing in the library or reading in the library. And it's been great for both those kind of extroverts and introverts to have a little bit more play. And it's also an opportunity for kids to, as was mentioned earlier, some kids are, connecting with the friends that they always connect with, but a lot of kids have, are connecting with kids that they aren't in class with this year. So it's like kind of old friends and new friends are being made, which is kind of nice. And we have a little video of kids' voices, student voices about the impact of just that go play day. And it's adorable, way better than listening to us. I mean, I shouldn't say that, but it's true.
The
So-
beginnings, the volume of the beginning, I bring it down and then you can bring it up, just a heads up.
Sometimes it doesn't work that we.
Yeah, we're not hearing it.
Yeah.
That has happened before, unfortunately, when we've had someone remotely try to play the video. Because what we need, I think, is for Libby.
So they need to be like participants or something.
No, she's a participant. I think she needs to do in Zoom, she needs to share her computer audio.
Wait, hold on.
High level living.
Yeah, you guys totally.
Sorry,
made
we
me-
gave you the heads up that there would be.
Audio. Wait, I just unmuted. Tell me if you can't hear it now.
And
We can hear you.
the special
Yeah.
teachers get out.
Can you hear it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Right, Carter, on a go play morning, what happens when the bell rings? So, wow.
Maybe a little louder.
The special teacher comes again. Walking from lunch.
You can come from this, right, in the morning? And then when the specials teachers get out there, what happens next? Go inside. You can choose to go inside or you can choose to do the playground, right? Yeah, and what do you like to do? Do you like to come inside or stay out on the playground? Oh, I'm on the playground. It's super fun. Izzy, what do you like to do? Do you like to go inside or outside? You like to come inside and you get to play in the music room sometimes? Yep. And do you remember, Ozzy, when we played with the magnet tiles? Yeah, you made towers. And then you like to crash them down, right? Yep, and you like to go outside and play? What's your favorite thing to do outside? You like the swing, the slide, and the house, you said? Yeah. Well, thank you so much, you two. I like that you can go and boys and do fun activities. I like how you get play extra time. I love both play because I get to play basketball with my friends and we play 1v1s and we pretend like it's the championship and then I love about the spike thing because you can go so high on it. And I love soccer because we can go against teams and we can win and we can go and we can do tricks. That's okay, because we get to have more time, so if anybody's late-ish, then we don't really have to worry about like being late. I like that you say that because like we get a choice and after we get to be the especially we a little different like once you I'm wanting to find different schedule. Yeah, something like on a Copeland morning, we're allowed to come inside, and we have fun outside or inside. I normally go outside or inside, depending on. Yeah, what's some of the things you like to do outside on Go Play mornings? Well, it's really cool, so I probably go on the spider swing. On the spider swing to move your body? Yeah. Nice. And then if you come inside, what's been your favorite inside activity? Stuffies. What did we do with stuffies? We made them houses. We made them houses and we filled with blocks. Out of musical instruments. That's true. We got out some drums and then we made like beds and pools with them. Yeah. Yeah, it was pretty fun. I like that like tapping thing. Oh, we did the Dandia dance. That's what you're talking about. Really fun, and I also like the stuffy making like the houses. The houses that we made with the stuffies. That was pretty fun. What about you, Maya? My favorite thing was doing the Dandia dance, but I also like playing outside. What do you like to do outside? I like to play with Asa on this run. Absolutely, it's super fun to be with your friends some extra time, especially if you're not in the same classes, because some kids will play with kids that they don't have in their daytime classes. Thank you. Okay, no problem. I like to be in the library because like you get to learn stuff every single time you get to be in the library, and then you get to go check out books, which is really, really fun. And when you're in it before, like when it's your day to do along the recess and you come into the library, you get one more book to be able to check it, and I feel like that's good. I like the library because you get to do fun activities and play with Legos and have fun reading. And George read out loud to you. It's really fun. My favorite thing is playing with my friends. If I'm outside or inside, I like everything I do, and I like playing with my friends the most. My friends are what most matter to me.
I don't know if you caught that last
Yeah.
part. She says, I get to play with my friends and my friends are what most matter to me. So,
Mm.
yeah. Yes, that one. That was a good one. Okay. Right, and the next slide has some photos and quotes from Katie's classroom.
Yeah, there's a couple, the first one, was really his quote. I said, I'm making a big tower with bugs on it and I'm using my imagination. Right, like just showing the different expression where he was doing that mixing materials. And then, their child says, Miss Katie, look what I made. Will you show it with my mom? And I get that a lot. Like there's the proudness that they have, when they make something. This particular girl used to make gears. She likes to show blocks, how they're like, you press this button, it does this thing, and it's awesome. And then another example in the forest of like doing their own science and discovering and kids playing together that normally don't play together. And I just want to throw in a couple other examples. Yesterday, I had a couple of kids, one who's learning to take turns and another one that's learning just to parallel play, and they just sat next to each other and set the 2-minute timer and just shared the one toy back and forth, and it was really beautiful to see that connection of two kids that normally don't act. And then last week we had the firefighters come and talk about fire safety, which is a subject that's, can bring up a lot of big feelings. And so later that day, they all lined up the chairs and they were all role playing and processing those feelings and what that feels like and the experience, and like that really, that gets into kids' brains, and then they have more knowledge, and we do that in our own head. We plan ahead and think through things, and play does that for kids. And so yeah, the impact was big. Yeah.
Connecting back to the slide about play being potentially perceived as a luxury. As we shared before, it's so important for all of us, including us adults. So this slide has a bunch of pictures of our staff playing together. And at UES, as a staff, when we engage in plays in various ways, it helps us to strengthen our community just the same as our students. This year, the times that we've had in services, there are moments in the in-services that we are able to engage in some play. And for example, Brendan McLean made this incredible Jeopardy game, and to just hear the playful banter, to see the strengths of each of our staff colleagues just was wonderful and hilarious. And then at our last in-service, the last little chunk of it at the end of the day, all of us got to choose a play activity, and there were various forms of play. Katie was sharing this awesome book about the 8 different ways to play. And you could see it in the offerings.
I get the Stuart Brown again. After 35 years of studying adults' lack of play and play, what adults do. He's came up with these 8 different types of play that we all do. So you should all go look up what your personalities are in play. It's very interesting. I want to also add that like the studies will show in Japan that play is as important as diet and exercise in the longevity of humans, and some studies have shown. So when you stop playing, you start dying. There we go. The quote.
And like it's building such relationships at our school. Something that we've noticed, just like our students, that building of trust, the building of empathy and resiliency, we're leaning into that as a staff when we have these opportunities to play together. We really see that coming to life for so many people around our building as we get to know each other, or people that we've known for a while. It's been lovely.
And it was really fun. I didn't participate in any one particular play during staff choice time, but I walked around to just kind of see. And as a former kindergarten teacher, it's always really interesting to me what people choose for their play options. And there are many rooms I walked into, I wasn't surprised to see who was at, needlework and who was doing pickleball tournament and things like that. But there were some places where it was just like a fun surprise to see like who's a Swiftie making friendship bracelets and who's at the what Max and Brendan McLean dubbed the Vlasic Classic pickleball tournament in the gym with prizes of jars of pickles for the winners. So it was just really, and that was just something where I said to the staff, you have this time. like put out an offering, what do you want to bring people into your room to do? And it was just really cool to see what people came up with and what people were drawn together around. And so looking forward to finding more opportunities to do that this year during in-service for faculty meetings. Another piece that we're doing that is a type of play or connection is working with doing staff circles as opportunities to be connecting with each other. So that's something that we're building in as well, because having just joyful conversations is another form of play.
Really feels like you're part of a team when you play together, and I think the classroom, the same thing happens.
And that's all. Do you have questions for us?
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any questions for our UES team? I just wanted to note an appreciation for how you made the connection between the strategies that you're using for play and the school's continuous improvement plan, that this isn't really just for the benefit of joy, but there are really deep connections being made with the goals of the school. So I just wanted to thank you for including that and as part of your presentation, so we can, you're connecting the dots for us, which is very helpful.
Cool.
Thank you.
All right, thank you so much.
Thanks.
I think we're on to Libby and Mike. The budget priorities and pressures.
Hard left turn.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I was gonna say, well, this
Oh, yeah,
is-
no, your challenge here is, Libby, how to make this
How do
playful.
you follow that?
Yeah, this isn't as much fun, guys. I'm really sorry. Hold on, let me just make this full screen. All right, so tonight we are going to kick off budget season with our budget pressures and priorities. The board has gotten this presentation beforehand. I'll let you know that we have made some small tweaks after multiple eyes have been
Yeah,
on this
one
presentation.
second, Libby, 1 second.
Should we do it on the laptop?
Is there a way to make it a little louder in the room?
Yeah, it's a little.
Thank you.
Is that better?
No, I don't think it's you. I think it's just the speakers could be turned up. Let's try it now.
Is that better?
A little bit, maybe go a little, like one more knock. Okay, how about now?
Testing, 1, 2, 3.
That's better, right?
Better.
Is that, how about over on that end of the room? Okay, all right, we're good to go.
All
Thank
right. So this presentation is slightly, I was saying this presentation is slightly different than the one that was sent to board members a day or two ago, just because I've had more eyes look at it and we made some adjustments to just a few places on the slides, but most of it is pretty similar. Oops, hold on. But before we get into the pressures that we face this budget season, we wanted to remind the school board and the community just how awesome we are. And it's the financial resources that we put towards our schools that allows us to accomplish just absolutely wonderful things for kids. All of these super happy kids, all of these pictures have been taken just in September and October just this year. And we've had so many beautiful, awesome things happening with our kids. So before we get into budget season and our pressures, I just want to remind us that it's the financial resources that allows us to have such a robust, flexible pathways opportunity at the high school. Last year's graduating class, 95% of our graduating class participated in at least one flexible pathway opportunity. We work with over 300 community partners to provide high quality opportunities beyond the school walls. Not many school districts can say that. We have over a 96% graduation rate last year. We have nature-based programming at ECO at UES, and you just heard about all their play initiatives as well that's connected. We built in community leadership to our middle schoolers through their experiences with our STEM and sustainability programming, which was a change a few years ago, and it's a financial change as well as a human resources change. We score well above state averages in the state assessments year after year. That's largely due to our effective MTSS model, which takes a lot of financial and human resources to put on. And not just statewide, but nationally, our SAT score, this SAT score in 2024-25 nationally was 1069. The Vermont average was 1125, and MHS's average was 1214. So it's
Wow.
not just our state assessments, but it's also the national assessments that we score very high on. We have increased the number of students taking AP coursework at MHS from 35 kids in 2021 to 83 kids in
Wow.
2025. That's a 137% increase in kids taking AP classes. And last year, 86% of our kids who took the AP test scored a 3 or higher on that exam, which is also a national exam. So before we get into all the pressures, I just want to remind the board and the community that the financial resources that we put towards our school, which goes directly to our people, and our people meaning the students and the families and the staff, does make a difference for kids and families. So just wanted to make sure that we preface this presentation with all the good things that happen in our schools and the results we get. So here's our timeline. The board is well aware of this timeline. Today in November, we're gathering input. We're starting to really understand what the pressures are. The administrators are developing their first draft of school-based budgets, and Mike is working with us to try to figure out how to make the district-wide budget. In December, the first draft will come to the school board in that first meeting. We'll revise based on the feedback that we hear from the community and the school board for the second meeting. And then the third draft will be shown at the first meeting in January. And by the the second meeting in January, the board will need to approve the budget warning for the budget. So you can see the timeline there, and then we'll have a public information hearing on March 2nd, the day before town meeting day on March 3rd. I'm going to quickly go through these slides because the school board is well aware of educational finance. These were largely put in from just moved over from last year's presentation, but I do want to make sure that we have multiple places in our media and our communications with our community of just how Vermont education finance works. So just as a quick reminder, the education finance system is split into 3 ways. There's revenues going into the education fund, then education spending and other uses of the education fund are going out. All school districts put their tax money that they've collected into one fund, and then it comes back to us. So it's not just, our decisions don't just impact MRPS, they impact the entire state, and others impact us as well. Use of the education fund, that they're funding education. It's also funding universal school meals. It's funding early college tuition. It's funding after school. And I crossed out PCB mitigation and remediation because there's no more money left for that. And that's been put on hold from the state perspective. And then the cost shifts to the local budgets over the last few years. The mental health needs of children and families has certainly shifted to school districts. And I'll talk more about that later in this presentation. Vouchers to private pre-Ks have been shifted to local budgets. All facility needs are shifted to local budgets. We have no state school construction aid, which we hear a lot about in the news. And all PCB mitigation and remediation for those schools who have been tested has been shifted to local budgets. Just a reminder that last year in January, Anna Vick from MRPS Pi, our fearless leader of MRPS Pi, and myself put together a three-part series of how does education finance work. Some of the information may be out of date because we were referring to last year's budget, FY26, the year we're in right now. But most of it is pretty spot on as to how the education funding formula exists currently and what might lie ahead. So most of the information is pretty accurate. However, there might be some numbers that are out of date just simply because it was talking about last year's budget. Oh, we're not going to watch these. Hold on. Also, Lola Dufour did a great little comic series about how Vermont funds its schools because it's just so hard to understand, but this video does a great job explaining that. So everybody knows where that is if you want to check those videos out. Going into our history, this is where we've been and where we are. Those overall percent increases is the piece that the board might want to pay attention to as we look at the rest of this presentation. You can see that it's been ups and downs. Lots of things have affected this. So for instance, in FY25, Act 127 had the new weights. That was the year our budget went down and we made the very hard decision to close the Roxbury Village School. And last year we were at a 5.74% increase and it passed. That's just looking at our history in a different format. So let's look at the pressures that we're facing this year from MRPS. This is our NESDEC enrollment projections. This was actually the same graph that was shown on this presentation last year because we haven't gotten the new projections just yet from NESDEC. That Nick has actually just started working with them to get new enrollment projections. So as soon as we get that, that's usually a pretty quick turnaround. We'll update this slide and we'll update the board as to what NESDEC is saying. But enrollment does impact our budget. So as of October 20th, we have a decrease of 11 students from last year. And this is not long-term weighted ADM, which is what we see in our education tax formula. These are actual students who are in our schools. So actual student counts, we decreased 11 students, which is not bad. It's not a huge decrease at all. We're pretty much plateauing in terms of our enrollment, which is what NESDEC predicted. But we're going to assume, just conservatively, a decrease of about 15 students for FY27. This is based on the estimates from NESDEC from last year and our yearly actuals year over year. And if we were just to say, well, I know Jake is going to shake his head at this, but but if we were just to take the amount of long-term weighted ADM that we got for our students last year, and while that's a weighted average, if we just looked at it by actual students, so last year our LTW ADM, so that's our per pupil essentially, was $14,798. We multiplied it by the actual students that we have this year. It comes out to 16,740,000. I'm sorry, from last year. Using this figure to estimate FY27 with a decrease of 15 students, we would get 16,588. And there's a difference of a little more than 150,000 there. So this is just meant to show that decreasing enrollment, even a small amount of students, does impact our budget. But I do want to remind the board, just like in that green box, that these are not actuals. They're just predictions of a potential impact. Another way to think about this is that about every 15 students is nearly the same as the cost of one full-time mid-career teacher if we look at their salary and benefits. And it's still not inclusive of weights, but it's a good way to think about how that type of enrollment decrease can influence our budget or what it equates to monetarily. In terms of healthcare, we have gotten from VHI that our increase for next year is 7.3% increase, which is much lower than it has been over the past few years, which has been around 12 to 15%. So we're at 7.3%, which we're all celebrating in the field, which sounds crazy that we're celebrating 7.3%, but we are. So just to see how that's increased over the years, in FY18, which is the year before I started as superintendent, for MRPS, healthcare per teacher was $17,394. And in FY26, it was $40,909. So when people are looking at where the increases, the drastic increases are, they can look no further than right here. 99% of our MRPS employees are what's on the gold CDHP family plan or single plan, but they're all on the gold CDHP piece. So the cost of the family plan for gold CDHP in our healthcare is $35,227 to MRPS for each employee who's on that. The employee cost is $8,807 a year. So using our staff census for this current school year, with a 7.3% increase, it's a $329,000 increase to our FY27 budget. In terms of salaries, so we are negotiating with our MRE SSA, who are our instructional assistants, and our MREA, which are our licensed teachers and faculty. We're negotiating with them, so we're not sure what the percent increase will be yet. If we use the Northeast inflation rate, which is 3.3% increase, then you can see the projected increase, assuming our staffing stays the same for each of those categories. Now, negotiations go as negotiations go. I would make a very educated guess, and I'd probably be correct that we will be negotiating for numbers that are higher than 3.3% for both of those groups. In terms of AFSCME, they're not negotiating next year. Their salaries are set. They have a 4% increase, which equates to just over $61,000 for AFSCME. And our non-union salary increase, which includes the administration, have a 3% increase in their contracts. And that equals a 70,000% increase to our budget. And then if we look at employees from FY26 moving on step increases in FY27, that will be another $214,000. So overall salaries at probably a minimum number would be $8,800. Sorry. Most likely it says will be higher with negotiations. So all that's to say that these pressures that are more in the control of MRPS than others, with the exception of healthcare, that has a total tax impact before CLA of $1,291,228. That's a 3.99% increase over FY26. This is with us not doing anything except for paying people, paying the healthcare, and looking at changes of enrollment. That equals about a 9-cent tax increase from last year, and that's with a completely level programmed budget, which is what we tried to do last year, which doesn't sound so bad. We could do that, I think. I think our taxpayers would be okay with that. However, now we need to think about our state and federal pressures as well. So the state, at the end of the legislative session last year, passed Act 24, which is the yield bill. Just a reminder, the legislature passes a yield bill every single year. This happens regardless of the year, regardless of what's going on. So they passed the yield bill. Just a reminder that nearly every budget, except for I believe 2 in the state, passed on town meeting day. So voters approved every budget on town meeting day. However, for that yield bill, the governor and the legislature decided to use one-time funds to reduce property taxes. And how they did that was they transferred $77.2 million from the general fund, and they transferred $41 million in an education surplus. And so that equaled $125 million to the education fund in order to reduce property taxes for citizens. When you use your one-time money to do this, and I'll invite Jake and Jill to jump in at any time that I make a mistake in how I explain this. When you use one-time funds in that way, it's going to leave a gap in the education fund. And our friends over at the Joint Fiscal Office have told us that that's a gap right now of $118.2 million in the education fund for FY27. Julia Richter at the Joint Fiscal Office has shared that it equates to 1 cent on tax rate per 14 million. So another way to think about that is it's almost a 9-cent increase in the FY27 tax rate that this gap in the education fund causes without anybody doing anything. So what I did was not the exact math. I know we need to do this, but I looked at our FY26 budget and I simply started adding money to our general budget until I got to that roundabout 8-9 cent increase. And in order to get that 9-cent increase, we would need to add $1 million to our FY26 general budget in FY27 to have an 8 to 9 cent increase. So from the state's buy down last year, that could impact us pretty significantly in our FY27 budget development process without us, and it has a very big impact on us, and we haven't done anything to cause that. It's simply because of the gap in the education fund that needs to be made up this year by taxes, which could have other ways the legislature decides to make it up. That's one of the unknowns as we go through this budget season. Jake, how'd I do? Is that okay?
I have a question, which is maybe another way to think about it and maybe wrong, which is that if the statewide gap is 118.2 million, then MRPS's portion of that gap is the $1 million?
I don't know if that works.
No? Okay, never mind. We won't think of it that way then.
the way we were thinking about it was how would we, if we had 9 more cents last year on our tax rate, what would our general budget need to be? And it ended up
Yeah.
being $1 million more.
Yep, okay.
Jake's silent though on the issue, which makes
He
me nervous.
nodded. He said you nailed it.
Oh, okay. I didn't hear him. Make me nervous, Jake. The potential federal impacts. This is another, I mean, part of this is we're playing poker. We're trying to make decisions on a deck of card or a card that we don't know all the information for. So we have no idea really what the federal impacts are. We have hunches. So we have a hunch in the education field that IDEA, which is special education funding from the federal level, will stay the same. So we kept it the same. We have a hunch that Title 1A will stay the same. That has been called into question. And my original slideshow of this, as Tim and Mia can attest to, had that zeroed out. However, multiple people, multiple sources, as we look into it, believe that Title 1A may stay the same. Title 2A, which goes to professional development, and Title 4, which I believe technically is like technology, but we always roll it into Title 1A and Title 2A, will be zeroed out potentially. And then Medicaid seems to, right now, they're making lots of changes to Medicaid, but we believe it's either going to stay the same or even increase a little bit. And so when we look at all of those, we're looking at having to either make up the difference for Title 2A or not use that funding, which it basically equates to $164,757 change in our budget. So when we look at the summary of the state and federal pressures, it's more than our level programmed budget. So with the state buy down of taxes is of $1 million to us, and a federal resources changes of 164,000. The total pre-CLA impact could be over $1 million, which is a 3.3% increase over FY26, and it's nearly a 9-cent increase to our taxes. And we have no control over this piece right here. So if we look at the summary of both this, or the state, federal, and MRPS pressures, we add those two up together, and that's a 7.59% increase over FY26, which if you remember back from the histories chart, that's way above what we've had. The highest we've had thus far in my tenure as superintendent is 6.9%, and that was with one failed budget. So we're at 7.59% without even going into budget season this year yet, without truly looking at actual numbers this year. And that equates almost to an 18-cent impact on our taxes, an 18-cent increase to our taxes. When we switch gears a little bit and look at our priorities, the administrative team looked at our priorities from last year, and we talked about whether these were the same this year, and they are. So when we're thinking about the priorities and how we're tying them to our school board goals for us, we want to maintain resources for an effective MTSS model in SEL and academics. We want to do that by abiding by our class size policy, by the educational quality standards and research-backed guidelines for staffing levels. We want to allow for professional learning and equitable and inclusive classroom instruction. This is where that Title II dollar might impact some decisions we make. We want to sustain safe facilities. We want to ensure the continuation of co-curricular activities, to our friend Jim Eichenberg's point earlier. We want to develop a budget that's fiscally responsible for taxpayers by exploring all of our system for efficiencies and ensuring financial coherence across our buildings. And we want to protect the services dedicated to our most vulnerable children and families. So one of the things that I wanted to think about as I was presenting this was thinking about those priorities that the administrative team has that are connected to our school board goals. Just how much are we spending on two of them? Maintaining resources for an effective MTSS model in SEL and academics, and protecting the services dedicated to our most vulnerable children and families, because oftentimes our MTSS model is what helps the services for children and families. So when we're looking at FY26 staffing, which is our staffing we currently have, and our costs for social emotional learning, this is how we're spending those dollars. And I apologize if this is small on your screen. So we have 5 social workers. We've added 2 social workers since FY22. At UES, there are 2 social workers. At MSMS, there's 1, and at MHS, there's 2. We have 6 school counselors. We've added 1.6 FTE and counselors since FY22. You can also see where we pay for these positions. In FY22, we added 3 SEBL interventionists. There's 2 at UES and 1 at MSMS. They provide intensive student support. We have 2 SEBL coaches. One was added in FY20 and one was added in FY22. You see a lot of things from FY22 because that is when we had a lot of ESSER monies coming in. We have 1 behavior specialist that was added in FY21. We have 7 behavior technicians. This is relatively new. The last 2 contract negotiations with Maressa, which are instructional assistants, we changed the language in that contract to make 3 categories of instructional assistants. So our behavior technicians is a category now within that contract. And then we have 1 SEL and wellness administrator to work with the system and all of these wonderful human resource people. And we added that position in FY22. So all of this equates to a bit over $2 million when all is said and done in terms of the cost for the human resources for our SEBL MTSS model. Just to put some of these numbers into context, the National Association of Social Workers and the American School Counselor Association recommend 1 social worker, 1 counselor for every 250 students. MRPS has 1 social worker for every 224 students, so we're pretty close to that. In Vermont, I found this fascinating. The data is from 2021, and I linked the source at the bottom of this particular slideshow. I'll make sure the board gets a copy of it. In Vermont, there's 1 social worker for every 1,265 students in public schools.
That is wild.
In MRPS, we have 1 counselor for every 187 students, so we're below that ratio, that recommended ratio from the national associations. And in Vermont, there's 1 counselor for every 190 students, so we match pretty much the Vermont average there, just to put those numbers into context. I tried to look up other intervention positions, and they're simply too unique and are called so many different things across the nation that there's no national there's no one thing that people call them, so there was no data to reflect that. In terms of academic learning supports, so our MTSS model staffing and costs for academics in this school year, you can see what we have here. We've had a math coach for a long time. For a long time, they were more of an interventionist at MSMS, but now more of a district math coach working K-12 on tier 1 instruction. Then we have 1.0 math intervention paid out of Title I funding who is currently at MHS. We have 4 math interventionists paid out of local funding. 3 of those were added in FY22, paid for by ESSER money. We have 2 at UES, 1 at MSMS and 1 at MHS. Actually, that's a typo. Sorry, I'll fix that. There's 2 at MSMS. We only have 1 math interventionist at MHS. We have 3 FTE in literacy intervention paid for by Title I. 2 of those were added in FY22. 2 of them are at MSMS and 1 is at MHS. We have 3 literacy interventionists paid for by local funds. So we started with paying those in a combination of Title I and local funds. We've moved them over into the local, and they work with students in need of tier 3 instruction or heavy remediation. 2 of them are at UES, and then there's a shared position between MSMS and MHS. And then we have 1 director of curriculum and technology. Mike, of course, does lots of things, but he does lead the work and the academic support for MTSS across the district, with principals playing a big role in that as well. So that equates to 1.5 million. And so in all total, our human resources for the major components of 2 of the administrative priorities cost $3.8 million to the district in terms of the human resource piece of it with staffing and benefits. So as we look forward, we've got next week, we will be talking about how to communicate our budget with my good friend Anna, and then we will get going with our budget presentations. but we've had some significant pressures coming up against us. We believe we're predicting that we're going to have to really work through as we get into budget season here. Happy to take any questions.
Let's start with any clarifying or follow-up questions for Libby, and then that last slide did ask a question of us, which
Oh, yeah,
is,
sorry.
what is the data or other information that the board would want? Maybe like at the next, when we present the draft budget, but let's start with any clarifying or follow-up questions for Libby from this presentation.
I just have a really quick question. When you were talking about the increase in salaries and increase in healthcare costs, let's see. The salaries table, the projected increases included, it says inclusive of benefits. So those are benefits other than healthcare costs? Cause the slide before
Oh.
that.
Yeah, if you looked at the slide from I took that out for the
Gotcha.
slide that was one of the pieces that I revised.
Okay.
Yeah, because then I was like, it's counted twice.
So now in this one we just saw, it's not counted twice.
I believe it's correct. Yeah, Mike's on here, so he can really talk to that a little bit more specifically, but I believe it's correct.
Yeah, it is. So when we said inclusive of benefits, we're talking about everything but healthcare.
Gotcha.
So like, your FICA and everything else, except, yep.
Got it.
Thanks, Mike.
Go for it, Jim.
Michael.
Just I'm like crystal clear on where we're at. So with kind of pullback in state and federal pressures, plus the pressures of just, projected increases in our spending to kind of essentially have what would be a level budget. We have got a $2.5 million gap that we need to fill, right?
We need to think about it in some way. We need to recognize it's there and decide, do we want to go forward with that? Do we want to reduce? Do we want to change? We have some decisions to make. Yes.
I have a follow-up to that, which is on that $1 million roughly that you calculated based on the buy down that the state did. I wonder how much of that we actually need to take responsibility for, since, as you were saying, we didn't decide to buy down tax rates ourselves. That was something that the governor and the legislature decided to do. And we might not know, or would we know? Maybe my question is, will we know in time for us to even set our budget what they're going to do about filling that gap?
My understanding is that, and Jake, correct me if I'm wrong, that we will know during the December 1 letter that sets the yield. Is that
Okay.
accurate, Jake?
Yeah, the letter will be scary and have a low yield
Uh-huh.
because it doesn't make any assumptions about
Okay.
what people are gonna do. And then as the session goes on, if they want to apply more one-time money to try to lower rates, they could do that.
Okay. So that's how it's going to come into play in our actual budget, is going to be in that dollar yield number.
Yes, and when there's a lower dollar yield, that means higher tax rates.
Right. Right. Okay. That,
So
very
while
answers
while
my
you're
question.
correct that is not our fault, I guess,
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
it's not in our control, it does impact us.
Mhm.
It will most likely impact us, and it impacts us through the dollar yield, which the board knows is a significant factor in tax
Right.
rate calculation.
Right. That,
And could I just ask a kind of a follow-up about what that means? So it seems like we kind of have two choices. I mean, assuming the numbers don't change substantially, or there's not some white knight that rides in and with a big bag of money. It means we either have to, if we level fund, pass those costs largely along to the taxpayers of the town. or we have to make cuts in the order that would. Sounds like from what I'm looking at, you know, impact some of the programs that we find central to what we do. Or do something else like dramatically increase or at least substantially increase class sizes to kind of find savings that would otherwise make up that gap. Is that an accurate assessment or? am I-
Yes, that's relatively accurate. I think that there are efficiencies that we can find in our system. I don't know if we'll find enough efficiencies if we want to like to level fund a budget, right? To get to a level fund from last year. I don't know if we can get there, but we can look for efficiencies across our budget. Unfortunately, as the school board well knows, the cost saver is in human resource.
Yeah.
Is in salaries and benefits.
Well,
So that means people who we love.
And we've been, looking for efficiencies for like 2 or 3 years now and it's.
We've done some efficiencies, yes.
We have found some. We have found
Yes.
some, but like, you shake the couch and each time fewer quarters fall on the cushion,
Yeah.
so.
This is true.
Yeah.
It's one other question I have about the tax rate increase historically, and if you don't have this off the top of your head, that's fine. But I think it would be the slide that you shared with us in the presentation, I think is the actual tax increase that happened after CLA and after the dollar yield vote, right? But that maybe is different than the tax increase that voters voted on, or is this the tax? Because remember,
This
there's
is the tax rate before CLA. So it's
Slide
not
10.
broken up. The tax rate that voters vote on is after CLA, I believe. Jill, is that right? Because it's different by
Yeah.
town.
right.
Correct.
Town
Yeah.
meeting day, nobody knows what the tax rate is gonna be,
That's true. Right.
so they're not ever voting on a tax rate. It
Right.
says on the ballot, do you
That's true.
approve for people spending?
Right. So, and that's going to be the case almost entire, like, that will be the case again this year, sort of regardless of what we do. Voters won't know what the tax rate increase will be when they vote.
They will know what we're predicting it to be based on what the dollar yield is at that moment. But the dollar yield doesn't get set. I think what Jake's referring to is that the dollar yield doesn't get set into law until
Right,
June.
right.
So like last year, I forget what the number was, but in Montpelier, we were showing like 5% or something.
Yeah.
increase, but it Turned
Yeah.
out to be closer to 1%.
Right, because of the buy down.
Because of the buy down.
Right. I guess I'm just wondering out loud, just as a thought exercise, what the value of predicting a tax increase is if we don't even know what it's going to be.
Well, we do that every year. So if we didn't do that this year, it would be a significant change in how we communicate this to our community.
Right, these are also very uncertain times. I'm not trying to make a decision here, I'm just putting out an idea of. The reality is we won't know when we vote on the
I
budget.
believe what
the tax
I believe what the
increase.
warning does have to say, and I'm gonna ask my tax experts to correct me here and my smart business manager. I believe the warning says, do the voters approve a certain number for a budget, which is a certain percentage above last year's budget?
Right, of education spending or of full spending?
Full spending.
Okay, that's helpful to know.
Yep.
So if that, let's say my napkin math of $1 million more based on the
Yep.
buy down is correct, that $1 million will most likely be in that.
Yep,
It will be in there somewhere. It will be baked in somewhere.
Yeah.
Because of the set rate. Jill's looking at Jake though, so that could be wrong. I'm
I'm just-
watching you, Jill. I
he's
can't see
trying to-
Jake, but
trying to say
that
something.
could be
He's
wrong.
thinking out loud.
No, I was gonna ask another question. Do you, have any sense on weighting? Like pupil weighting, if our counts of English language learners or multilingual learners or eligible for free and reduced lunch is changing?
I'm not sure about free and reduced lunch. I'm looking to see if Nick's on here and he's not. He's because he would know that number better than I do. I'm not sure if that changed significantly, Jake. Our multilingual learners numbers have relatively stayed the same.
Okay, and
There
then
there may be one or two differences that might help us out, but not many. The other thing though that I will say is that the I'm trying to think how the weights work. So anybody jump in, Mike or anybody. We have more multilingual learners at the high school level, so that might influence our weights differently. Correct?
Oh, because currently high school students are weighted more
Yes.
heavily. So those kiddos who are multilingual learners
Who
at the
have, who have
high school
aged up, right? Who have
aged up would
aged up
be-
into the high
uh-huh.
school.
could influence our weighting to the good for us.
Yes.
I think it's additive, not multiplicative.
Is it like I'm not sure how that works.
Okay. Okay.
One last thing on student counts, I think on your slide. I know added $150,000 or something. I think that was based on 11 fewer students when. You said that population or estimating group thought there were gonna be 15 fewer students. So could be a little bit worse. than
Thanks, Jake. Thanks for pointing that out.
Yeah.
But remember, those numbers are really predictive, right? Because they're butts and seats, right? They're actual kids. They're not the weights. So they're not. It's just to give a sense of like when student enrollment decreases, even by a small amount of students, it will impact us and the amount of money that we can collect, right?
Yep.
But I'm going back to that slide, and if it's the same as what you presented, I mean, that estimate was 150,000, which compared
Yeah.
to the, like, whenever 2 million deficit is a relatively small piece.
Yep. It is a small piece. And it's equivalent to a teacher in a mid-year, that's where our teachers fall, mid-career family plan.
Yeah.
Which is, it's a little, 150,000 might be a little bit higher than what they'd make, but that with salaries and benefits, but it's close at this point.
I have one more follow-up question before we go to, or unless others do. You had I thought the slide that you shared where the context of, sort of what the best practice wasn't quite the word you used, but ratio of students to counselor and student to social worker was very helpful. And I heard you say you couldn't find it for interventionist. Was that also for academic interventionists?
Yeah, because people call
Okay.
them different things.
Okay, I wasn't sure if you only meant SEL interventionists.
No, there's like, people just call them different things and have different types of models. There's not one model. And so it's really hard to name what that is. And there isn't anything you can just like look up for a data source on that. Whereas
Okay.
a social worker is a social worker. You can look that up.
Okay. Any more question, Tim?
Yeah, on the federal funds, are those allocations announced in a way that's timely for our budget, or will that be uncertainty that we carry through the season?
That's uncertainty that we carry through the season.
Okay.
That's every year. That's
Okay.
not just this year, that's every year. We don't find out what our calculations are. I mean, on a good year, it's May, end of May.
Okay, thanks.
And Libby, the state pressures, presumably that is not unique to our district. That's something that every district is dealing with.
Every district is gonna have to face that, and as me and Jill know, the way I got that even thought process in my head was by talking to the superintendent up in Maple Run. of, hey, he basically was like, hey, Libby, you need to be paying attention to this. And so that's where I was on a phone call with him. I was like, you've got to explain this to me in like the most, like, pretend I'm a toddler. And he did for me. So that's where I got that even thought process. And once I talked to Bill up at Maple Run, I gave Jake a call to see if it kind of worked out, you know, if
Yeah.
that was a thought process I should be following or not. So I've tested that through a couple different ways. But yes, that is, everybody will be facing a low dollar yield because the dollar yield impacts all of us.
Sam, are you having fun yet?
I'm trying my best to follow what's up.
It is very challenging. Do you have any questions that would help?
I think my only misunderstanding is surrounding what the cent increase in taxes like translates to what taxpayers are actually paying in taxes.
That's a great question. We
Mike,
will
you
see
want-
that in budget drafts, right?
Mike, you want to take that on?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, my goal this year, you know, even though I'm the first year guy new, I'd like to show some examples of, you know, when we look at the whole set of taxpayer demographics, how they break out, you know, where the funds come from, and potentially even a chart that shows, you know, based on your home value and your income, you know, where you might fall, so you can personalize what the budget in front of you will mean to you as a resident taxpayer. And you know, I'm also going to try to show some income sensitive impacts to those who, based on their income, don't pay that homestead tax yield rate, but rather pay a percentage of their income. So my goal is to show many different versions of how the budget impacts individual residents of Montpelier and Roxbury.
In the meantime, a good rule of thumb is each penny is like $40 on a $400,000 house. So if we're hearing 20 cents, then that would be $800 on a $400,000 house.
And that's in your example, that would be an increase of.
Whatever they were already
Yeah.
paying
Right.
in taxes.
Yeah.
Okay, so, oh yeah, go ahead, Jill.
Oh, not a question. Libby, I lived in this world a long time and I really appreciate the thought and the specificity you just presented. Like, this was a really helpful walkthrough to show. It's really hard, you know, it's hard for a lot of us, even those of us who sort of live in this world, to follow, but I think you did a really good job of sort of breaking out the pieces that we do and do not have control over, and at least making sort of educated estimates so we have some idea of what we should be watching. So I just really appreciate, I know that probably took a lot of time to put that together, and I'm not sure every school board is gonna have that level of detail, so I just wanted to thank you for putting that time in to do that.
Big thanks to Tim and Mia at the VSBA conference for giving some good feedback of making it clearer. And to Jake for taking my phone call.
I just want to add, not only is it clear, but it's also, I'm looking at the meeting from a year ago. And the format is similar enough that I can actually follow like the trend from where we were last year at this time to now. So yeah, kudos for consistency and clarity.
That is all Anna Hipko every year.
So Jen, before we close this part of the discussion, there was that final slide asking board members for any data or other information or other presentations that would help us with decision making around the budget. So just want to open the floor up if there's those. You can also email that to Libby if it comes to you when you're, you know, falling asleep tonight. But if there's thoughts now. Yeah, right.
Well, what is the student level fund looks like a 20 cent increase, and was it $2.8 million increase? Is that what it was? So I guess part of what I'm hoping, and I think what we often see is sort of a couple of different scenarios. And I'm not sure if there are places where we could use more resources because we want to grow our capacity in those areas, or if we feel like the resources that we have are where we want to be in terms of our current population of students. And I think that we've often had, if we were gonna bring the budget down, this is the number of FTE that we would have to reduce. Of course, we don't want to see that, and we don't want to personalize any of that, but you know, I guess I'm hoping, because we are in negotiation season as well, that like some of that, that some of those options are there. If we're gonna level fund, you know, this is the increase that we're looking at. If we're gonna level fund and we wanna have a zero, you know, we don't wanna see a tax increase, how many FTE would that mean that we would have to lose or find, you know, efficiencies, I guess you could say. And then maybe like if we were gonna grow our resources in certain areas, what might that look like? Because we wanna do a little bit more in, I don't know, play or something like that, like just to sort of have a couple of different scenarios so that we're sort of looking at what the effects might be on taxpayers across a couple of different scenarios.
Rhett,
That's usually how it's done,
can
right?
I ask you a clarifying question?
Yeah,
So last year, we made the distinction, I think, to Scott's suggestion between level fund, which would mean like the same general budget as FY 26 versus level program, which means no cuts to programming, but no increases other. Is that what you mean when you say level fund, or do you mean like zero out the increase to the general budget? Just for clarity.
I mean, an increase to the lever, to the budget, but levels having the same programming.
Okay, so level programming, the
Yes,
distinction we
level
made last year.
programming,
Okay,
not,
thank
not a
you.
zero, not a zero increase in taxes, but I wouldn't mind seeing if we wanted to have a very small increase in taxes. What would that actually look like in terms of reducing our resources, meaning reducing our FTE?
Yeah.
Just to see it. We don't want to see that, of course, but you know, those are important factors to consider for everyone.
Okay, thanks.
Any other requests? I kind of had the same one as Rhett, so he said it already.
Yeah, I'd love to see that too.
With one caveat that, and I know Libby, you'll do this, but to keep it as general as possible, I know last year.
Yeah.
We went through, I think, an unnecessary level of anxiety in the high school when we got to the conversations about a specific foreign language teacher, and yeah, in the end, I don't think it was necessary. And so if we can, yeah, keep those conversations very general around FTE, because those are, you know, our community members. And we don't want to be, you know, talking about cuts to their positions lightly.
Oh, I agree with you, Scott. I think that the challenge and the question, like not the first board meeting, that doesn't happen in the first budget meeting, but when we get down to it, where you all are actually voting on the warning and making a conscious choice, the question ultimately comes is where is that FTE located?
Yeah.
And so I think it's a really good discussion for the board to have about whether or not you want to ask that question or not.
Total.
And then just in a clarification, in last year's case, that was actually an open position, so there wasn't even a person who would have been let go. Because we left it in and we filled that position with 2 half-time people. I think it just further underscoring how challenging the decision is. Any other requests as far as,
Yeah, I was curious, I was just checking something with Jake, but if the actual increase from last year is 1% or ish or something like that because of the buy down, I guess I'd be curious if we can sort of reverse engineer not having that into the tax rate so we could see trend over 2 years. Does that make sense? So that it seems like we kind of artificially held down a 1% level last year.
a
from
1% tax increase
Tax
level, right?
increase level,
Right.
right, through and that was from stuff done at the state level. If whatever we come up with this year, I guess I'd be curious to see it as, I would expect if we artificially hold it down in year 1, it artificially goes up in year 2. I'd like to kind of understand what that year over year would look like, if that's at all possible, given the level of information we have right now.
I mean, like, I'm thinking of very fancy ways to do that, but the simple way to do that would be to like go back to right before town meeting day and what we had in our presentations for what we thought was gonna happen. Which
Right.
I think was around 5%, I don't really remember. And
I
that
think
would
it
have,
was 5.4, Jake.
and
Okay.
then. you
And
could do
then
it
take
that way.
out the like extra $1 million from this year that Libby was pointing out. From the buy down?
Oh, the buy down, no.
No, am I misunderstanding this?
No, I think we just have to, we can talk about the second step offline.
Yeah,
Yeah, but I think it's not that bad. We can figure it out.
I think the idea being it'd be interesting, I think, to me, to see what, what a steady progression would look like without, I think we did good work here last year by not doing our own buy down of like $500,000. So that's not to put that trap in place for the following year. And so I'd be curious to see what just without shifting costs from one year to another, just a plain increase would look like. That would help me as I kind of think about what's needed for this year.
I think we'll need to talk with you more, Tim, offline to make sure we understand totally from the back end.
How to show what you're
Yeah,
asking.
exactly. Yeah.
I
just
don't know if
to-
it's possible. It's not something to waste time on if it's too.
Yeah, Tim, I'm
No, I just
thinking-
want to understand what you're thinking about better. That's all.
All right.
I mean, I'm just looking at the, like, not thinking about tax rates, but just the overall increase in our budget is the same regardless of what the buy down was. And so if we're looking at whatever it was, 5.7% increase last year and a potentially 7.5% increase this year,
Right.
that's irrespective of.
Sure.
Yeah, but are you talking about, say we have an artificial 1% last year. And, with a new budget to get to where it needs to be, say it's a 7% increase, like, if we didn't have that, it would have been like a 3 and 3.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Basically, that's what I want to kind of understand. And I don't know if that's understandable because you can't know some of that stuff till the end of the day, I guess, after we pass a budget. So I just wanted to put the idea out as something I'm trying to think about, whether or not that, we can kind of see a more steady progression instead of that cost shift.
When I think about this, the macro level, it basically boils down to 2 years of tax increases impact into 1 year.
Yeah.
And that's also what we're experiencing. Instead of 5% in FY26, we had 1%, and now we're seeing like maybe 10%. 17 cents, or I think that's what it was, would be about 10%.
Yeah, and just as a reminder, I mean, right now, if we to level program with the predictions we're making right now is about even if we increase the salary through negotiations, we're about like 4 to 5% increase, which is where we normally like that's our average if not low average, if we're on the 4% side. So it's something for the board to just understand as we're trying to talk about this with our community. If it shakes out the way that, again, we're playing poker. There's a lot of unknown information that is that we don't have at the moment, but if these predictions reign even remotely true, the things that we're in control of, we know the most about, and we're at a pretty stable increase in an average increase of where we've been over time. And as the probably should stop talking because I don't want to dig myself a hole, but as the two slides on how we spend human resources in SEL and academic intervention show, this board and this community say that's a value. You know, since FY22, we've put significant human resources in those areas because it's something we value so much. And so so that's kudos to us, right? Because we have effective models going on in these areas now for kids to support kids.
Yep. All right, we're gonna pause it there. Because there's definitely more to talk about once we have the budget to look at. And as I said, if there's something that would help you wrap your mind around this that you think of as you're falling asleep tonight or making dinner tomorrow night, definitely don't hesitate to email Libby and me with it so that we can include it in the thinking and the process for drafting the first draft of the budget. The next item up for discussion is a request that we got from another school district asking us to support their efforts to essentially decouple bond funding from per pupil spending. And because what they're finding is that when those things are put together, it puts their per pupil spending above the limit that gives them an extra admonishment is not a penalty for essentially what looks like overspending in their district. And in their particular case, they're having some very, very significant challenges with their infrastructure that only a bond could raise the money for. And this is a new thing that the legislature put into place, this putting the bond responsibilities along with per pupil spending. And I think they passed it just this past legislative session, and they're saying that's having a very detrimental impact on our district, and they're asking that they're gonna be going to the legislature to ask them to undo that. And they've asked us and probably other boards to join them in asking the legislature for that. So we wanted to have a conversation as a board about whether or not we would join them in asking the legislature to decouple the bond spending. Any clarifying questions about that? I'm gonna ask you to direct them toward Libby or Jake. Because my understanding of this is shallow.
I don't have any problem supporting it. There's no harm in. And it does seem like it's a pretty, I don't know if it's an unintended consequence or not, but it does feel like. There's no state funding for this infrastructure, and there's some schools that have really like terrible infrastructure problems that are impacting student and staff health. And that if they go to fix that, they're considered excess spending. That's sort of the gist of this, right?
Right.
So I don't see any problem with asking the legislature to re-examine it personally.
I have a different take on it. So, the reason that this is an issue for the district is because their spending is at a very high level, right? So this, including their bond spending, puts them over the excess spending threshold, and they get tax on the overage, like a double tax. And so they want it backed out, but they're way higher spending than we are. If the legislature did back that out, then they would be out of the penalty, but that would make our taxes in Montpelier go up. Because instead of them putting a little extra, it has to get socialized to everybody else. who spends less, and so Montpelier taxpayers would pay more. If that makes sense. Because they're not paying a penalty, so the money has to get into the ed fund somehow. There's no magic money in the ed fund, so it just gets pushed on everybody else's property taxes. So, you know, is the problem for this district that bonds voted after July 1st, 2025 are included in excess spending, or is the problem that they are already spending very high? And you know, I think they might want to look at their general spending.
I have a question. If the CVCC bond passes, does that have an effect only on CVCC because it's its own district, or does it get distributed to all the contributing districts, and does that change our calculations for how our budget is determined?
Well, that's what year is that, FY29 or FY30 for the first payment on that, so that's not for a little while. But yeah, that would affect us because we would pay higher tuition for our students to go to CVCC, because instead of costing like $15,000 each or whatever, they have this huge bond cost, and so it would cost, I don't know, quite a bit more for each student. But that's not for a few years if it does pass.
Did that pass? I thought it.
We don't know yet.
We don't know yet.
There's still commingling votes.
I know it was voted yesterday.
I wonder if we remove the specific district from this question. I think that might be what Rhett was trying to get at, but using us more as an example, or maybe you weren't, but what I wonder is this something that could impact other districts negatively, simply because the fact that bonds are usually for a lot of money. So is it that, like, is this potentially an unintended consequence that could have more widespread impact beyond just this one district that is has this situation right now? I don't know if that's a question that's possible to answer, but when I looked at it and I saw, that's where my mind went. I didn't know that detail, which is helpful to know, but it felt to me like a solution that was looking for a problem, but also maybe just a way of like getting more money in the ed fund, which I understand is actually a problem. But is it a way of just pushing more of the burden to the local taxpayers to get more money into the ed fund? You know,
I might be way not understanding the question, but the excess spending threshold is a way of trying to constrain school district spending. That's why it exists. That's why they brought it back a couple of years ago. But they said, you know, if you vote any bonds after this point, you're gonna have to count that in your per pupil. They used to exclude that. Back in like prior to FY23, when they had the excess spending threshold, but they said if you vote any new bonds, you're gonna have to include that, you know, paying interest on the bond. So is it a way to get money to the ed fund? It's a way to penalize high spending districts. And as far as it being an isolated case, like I think there were maybe a couple dozen at the most districts, maybe 20 who hit the excess spending. And probably a small number of them are in this situation where they have new bonds. So I don't know how many.
What does excess spending mean? Like, how do you become an excess spender?
It's like you're over 118, you're over 118% of the prior year average spender.
So it's compared to all the rest of us, basically. Okay.
And our district is closer to the middle.
right. Okay, so with that as the calculation, it's not necessarily the case that in 5 years, I mean, I guess it's possible for somewhere down the road, for if we were to pass a bond vote, for that to put us over the threshold of excess spending.
Yeah, if in that time our spending really ramped up, then yeah, we could be among those.
It would need to be both things, is what you're saying.
You need to be a high spender and have a new bond.
Uh-huh.
So can I just follow your thing? So if you're a relatively high spending district and you have a serious facility need that's causing health problems or whatnot, the solution that this is incentivizing you to pursue is like a short-term patch that keeps you below an excess spending amount rather than investing in a longer-term solution. Is that what the incentive is?
Yeah, you could
Telling you
reduce
to
your
do.
regular spending.
Right.
You know, like suppose excess spending is like 18,000,
Yeah.
right? And you're at 17,500, and the
Right.
bond is gonna add 1,000, that would make you 18,500.
Right.
You could either do something regarding the bond, or you could pass the bond, but try to get your regular spending down to 17,000, and then you
Right.
would never go over the 18,000.
Right. Yeah, but assuming everything else is relatively fixed, it would seem to incentivize it would seem to disincentivize investing in a more long-term permanent solution, all things held equal, than to just kind of patch along.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in that sense, I don't like it, but in the sense that it shifts costs to Montpelier.
Yeah.
Like I said, I mean,
very complicated.
there really seem to be, I don't know, there seem to be merits to both sides of this.
I do wonder how fluid like the threshold is, I guess, for what considers excess spending. Because if it's based on the comparison of all the school districts, that's gonna change from year to year, especially with inflation. So is it a new threshold every year? Okay, so I see nods.
Sounds like it, right?
It's, yes. Yes,
Yeah.
yes, it is. And it's on a per pupil basis, on a long-term weighted average per pupil basis. That's what they're using as that threshold. Last year was in the high 15s, I think. Or 16. I could check real quick.
Yeah, it gets inflated every year.
Yep, exactly right. And some of the things you guys are talking about made me want to just make a note that I think one of the reasons why they brought back capital spend as far as like a bond or debt to do facilities or any kind of major improvements, the reason why they brought that back along with the penalty was, I think the state's vision was what's going on right now, which is they wanted to have more control over which districts, which buildings, get that level of improvement. They didn't want every district going out and, fixing up all the infrastructure, which they know has been suffering for years. I think this was one way to curb that and control the facility, bond spending.
Yes, without actually providing any funds to invest in the facilities that our students go to school in every single day.
Correct.
I mean, if it's
Sorry,
temporary, it kind of makes sense, but if it's just a forever thing where they just keep spending but don't help, that's
Right.
Agreed. I meant it more towards a temporary control until all this is solved as far as the redistricting, right? And the consolidation. Yes, sorry.
Oh, okay. So they are perhaps thinking that there are districts who are going, oh, if we're gonna get merged with another district, we want to actually fix our high school first. And therefore they thought they needed like some kind of 3-year cap, like to put this in place in order to cap potential out of control bonding for this transition period. Am I understanding that correctly?
That's my understanding. Yeah, that's yeah. I mean, I think that's one of the primary reasons why they brought back. Remember, because the excess penalty threshold went into like a moratorium for like 5 years, right? Like right during COVID and thereafter. They brought that back, and then they brought back, because for many years, bond and capital, long-term debt spending for facility-related infrastructure was never part of that penalty.
Right.
It was always a separate cost that wouldn't penalize you, wouldn't put you into the excess penalty threshold. But when they realized, the changes that are probably really needed, and they just brought it back and they added that layer to curb that spending. So yes.
Yeah, okay. Okay, well, we're approaching the time that we have allotted for ourselves, and we still have a couple more things to talk about on the agenda. So I'm gonna just add,
If this building on July 12th, 2026, we're sitting in this room and we're in 2 feet of water, and we need a bond to. Does that put us in the excess spending category if this building needs to be replaced?
it sounds like it depends on how big that bond is and whether or not we're anywhere near excess spending with our regular.
So
Education
kind
fund.
of like we're somewhere in the middle and we add 100 and, I forget what they said the high school over there would be. I don't know, what was the number? 110,
Yeah.
so we're somewhere in the middle of the state average, we had $110 million bond because. Just in the hypothetical situation that we build the high school, that because this one is underwater, does that penalize us, and is that something that we should consider as we consider this question, because. This building's in a flood zone, I don't know if that's something that wants to be part of our consideration, I just wanna put that out.
Sounds like it's hard to answer that in the abstract because what gets added to the per pupil spending is probably the bond interest payments, right? Yeah, so not the bond itself, but bond interest payments.
And the cost of the materials is gonna keep increasing every year, so they'll
Certainly.
cost a lot more money
Certainly,
anyway.
yeah.
To be clear, it's the debt service, it's principal and interest is
Oh, thank you. To pay down the bond.
Right.
correct, because the debt service, which is principal and interest, would be therefore added to your budget. That's just an expenditure that you'd
Yep.
have to come up with every year. Yep.
And I would imagine that some people in the State House would say, why are you guys building $110 million high school 20 feet away? Maybe you should go to U32. And then that's why they wouldn't have a lot of sympathy, and they wouldn't want to undo the excess spending penalty on us. So
that opened a whole lot of can of worms,
So
we
my
don't
feel-
need to go there.
If I'm reading the room, my feeling is that there's not overwhelming support in either direction, so maybe we are not gonna do anything.
Well, I was actually
tonight.
gonna ask the question.
Yeah.
I don't think we should just read the room. I think we should ask the question. Just, are you in favor of supporting the efforts of this district to decouple the bond from from excess spending penalty?
I mean, I am not, just based on the fact that I don't feel I know enough to intelligently support it.
Okay, Casey?
Similar with a good understanding personally of like the timelines and how the state aid changes that are coming down the pike play into that as well. Not feeling strongly one way or the other, so not.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think we have enough information to suggest that we should support it or not, so at this point.
All right, Lynn?
I'm a no.
This isn't an official vote, so Sam, you can weigh in if you'd like.
I think it sounds like there's a lot of factors at play where we don't actually know if it would be beneficial to support this or not at this moment, so I think I'm a no.
Right?
I feel the same way, I'm confused.
All right, Tim?
Same.
Jake, I think we know where Jake stands.
Yeah, and I believe Jake, so.
Okay, all right then, we will not get behind their efforts.
Do you have any indication of if there are other districts or the?
Yeah.
That was out of curiosity.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to policy monitoring. This is, again, we do this similar to the consent agenda where we'll do lump policies together. Libby has monitored for us B5, which is employee unlawful harassment, D6 class size, which is appropriate timing, given that we're headed into budget season. And C4, limited English proficiency students. So I'll entertain a motion to accept all the monitoring reports for all three policies. And then if a board member wants to pull one off, we certainly can.
I move we accept the 3 policy monitoring reports.
There a second?
I'll say.
Great. Any discussion about any of them? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so then we have one last item of business, which is to do a third reading of policy C13. Students who are unhoused. The policy committee, I'm gonna kick it over to you, Rhett, to tee this up for us as the chair of the policy committee.
There, we heard, I believe 2 members of the wider board recommend that the word homeless be changed to unhoused. And so in the policy committee, in our initial reading, we made that change. And then another opinion was brought forward that, that was not in support of making that change. For a variety of reasons. And, so we wanted to bring that question back about whether the word unhoused is the word that this board wants to adopt in this policy, or the word homeless is what this board wants to use in that policy. And there are, I believe, reasons to prefer one word or the other.
And if I could just add one piece of context that's come up through this discussion, very helpful discussion, is that homeless is the legal definition that and unhoused isn't a legal definition of status when it comes to housing. And so if we follow the path of actually following through on this policy, we would need to make sure that we were following the legal process, which was a question I had for Libby. And I wanted to bring that piece of context in as well to the discussion.
So I'll go ahead and jump, since I was the one who brought up concerns about the change. I've got 2. I've got one is the one that Mia brought up, which is that unhoused is not a legal definition, and this is a policy that reflects some, legal requirements, and I think it creates possible confusion and also possible compliance issues if we change the terms. And I have a broader issue too, which is I understand the intent behind the change, and I also understand that use of language is and can be very important in making sure that certain groups feel included. I also feel, as we've painfully seen over the last year, that there, I think, are times when those language changes make sense, and I think that there are times when those language changes have created the impression of language policing, of performative virtual signaling, of potential shaming that has received on a national level a backlash that is an impediment to achieving actual progress on some of the things we care about. And I think that, as a board, or as a person who cares very deeply about making sure that a variety of progressive causes, including that we give secure housing to people who do not have it, that backlash is real, and that backlash has caused a lot of harm and is causing a lot of harm. And it's not the sole cause of that harm, but I think it's something that deserves some attention. And I think that the progressive community has used some language that has been a lot of talking to itself and not creating pathways to open conversations that can, I think, break down some barriers and lead to less resentment and some real progress on change. So I think that in this case, I there, I think, are good reasons to use unhoused, but it's not as obvious as it is with some terms. And I think sometimes the harm of being a little too, maybe a little too in a conversation with ourselves on some of these things is shutting down some other conversations that need to happen. And I think this is one of those instances.
So the question is whether or not we send this to approval the way it's written, or send it back to the policy committee to ask them to change it back to homeless. That's the question on the table. Is there any other discussion?
I think one of the concerns about using a term that's not the like McKinney-Vento and other federal using the term homeless is that it might actually inadvertently change the definition or gray the area of the students that are actually getting this protection, and not to say that people would abuse it, but it's really important that we follow the legal terminology and the federal terminology so that we make sure we're protecting the kids that we're trying to protect.
I agree with that. So, just a clarifying question, because in one of the meetings, I had made the recommendation I remember it was students are homeless. I had made the recommendation of going like student first or student forward, I can't remember. Saying that students who are experiencing homelessness as opposed to homeless students, does that change the legal like framing such that you would still be concerned, Jim?
I think we have to have I'm definitely, I think students who are experiencing homelessness addresses my second point a little better, because I think that's more commonly understood and I don't think raises certain people's hackles in a way that's unproductive. My guess is that we would probably need to have the word homeless in there somewhere to ensure that we are in compliance and it is clear that what we're talking about is what the statute's talking about as well, but where that needs to be, I'm not sure.
Sounds like that's a question for Pietro.
Yeah.
Did this language come from VSBA?
Everything except for unhoused.
Oh, we just changed.
We made that our policy committee made that change.
Okay. But in that little sentence there, it says students in homeless situations.
Or based on their status as homeless. Yeah.
So did we just miss that one?
Probably yes.
I think since it's not consistent, we should kick it back to the policy committee and figure it out.
And get the question from Pietro about experiencing homelessness.
And it's also in the beginning of the third paragraph. Yeah, I think we should kick it back.
Yeah, okay. Is there anyone who thinks we should not kick it back? I just want to make sure but I think that's pretty much the action we're taking here. Okay? Thanks for the discussion, everyone. And with that, we have completed the business we set out to do tonight. Is there a motion to adjourn?
I'll move.
All right, Scott moved to adjourn.
Second.
Jake seconds it. Any discussion? All those in favor?
All right.
Any opposed? Thank you, everyone. Thanks, Libby. Enjoy the training.
Bye, team.
Bye, Libby.